Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Every now and then I do stories where in the comment section people go, if that was me, I'd file a lawsuit. So here I'm doing a story on the lawsuit filed by somebody in one of the stories that everyone said that about. Do you remember the guy in Utah who showed up for court just a couple minutes late, only to discover that about 20 minutes earlier, his own attorneys had talked the prosecutors, that, look, my guy's not going to show up. Let's just have him arrested in a bench warrant. How about that? And they told the court, we're not expecting him today. He ain't going to show. He ain't going to show. So I'm paraphrasing some of that. We'll go through that right now. But from the Salt Lake Tribune, Caleb sent it. Thanks a lot, my friend. Jessica Miller wrote the story. The Utah man sues his public defenders, alleging they conspired to put him in jail. The Utah man is suing his public defenders after he says they schemed to get an arrest warrant to put him in jail. And by the way, for those of you who say, but Steve, how do we know the whole story? It was all on video. You can go on YouTube and watch the video. You can see the entire video. You can hear the voices of the people talking. You can see who's talking to whom, what they're saying. And you can also see when he walks in and shows up in court. So the lawsuit stems from the hearing back in March of 2018, where Luis Sanchez was scheduled to be in court for charges alleging that he drove drunk more than 3 years earlier. He was supposed to be there at 9 a.m., but his court-appointed attorneys had his case called early at 8:45, and they then suggested that a warrant probably ought to be issued for his arrest. One of them whispers to the other, let's call it and get a warrant, according to a video of that day in court. And someone says, is it time? 8:40? Oh, okay, 4 minutes, 8:45. So they agree that they're going to get the case called 15 minutes early and simply have a warrant issued for their client. And I've mentioned before that when you're an attorney representing clients in court, which I've done a couple times in my life, having been an attorney for 31 years now, that you do everything you can to help your client, not just file nice legal briefs, file fancy lawsuits, not just stand in front of juries and make arguments. Sometimes you got to do the little stuff. So if the case gets called and your client's not there, you actually say, Your Honor, give me a split second here. I got to step out in the hallway and take a look. And most judges will say, oh, okay, as long as you're actively doing something to move the ball down the field. You don't say, oh, he ain't here. I'm sure he's not going to be here. Even though it's 15 minutes early, call it and we'll issue warrants. This is utter neglect on the part of the attorneys at the very least, if not more. After a few minutes, the attorneys stand at the podium, tell the judge they are ready to go on the case, but because he wasn't there, a warrant for his arrest was issued. The problem with them saying they were ready to go is they knew their client wasn't there, and they also knew that it wasn't time to call the case yet. So the judge on this one can actually say, the attorneys told me they were ready to go and they weren't expecting their client to show up. But the attorneys have the problem here. Sanchez said in an interview that he thought the public defenders wanted him in jail because he disagreed with how they were handling the case. And this is another problem. A lot of public defenders get handed a stack of cases. Here, these are all yours. Handle all these cases. And it's easier to plead everybody out. It's faster. But if someone comes along and goes, I want to fight this, a lot of defense attorneys even will look at that and go, I don't think you can win this based on these facts, or I don't want to spend the time on this, in which case you should step back and let someone else take over the case. But that's what he says is happening, but we don't know for a fact. But he said from the beginning, they didn't want me to fight the case. They were pressuring me to plead guilty. At one point, I had to file my own motions. He said he'd been a little early to court that morning and had spent a few minutes waiting in his car to kill time. And it was 9:07 by the time he got through the long security line and into the courtroom that was overflowing with other defendants and attorneys waiting for their cases to be called. And you watch the video, the courtroom is packed. It's wall-to-wall packed. And you can see when he comes in. And now here's the problem. He was 7 minutes late to the courtroom. Most judges have a docket call. It's a list of names and cases to be called. And if the docket says be there at 9, you should be there at 9. However, judges will start calling cases at 9. And if someone's not there at 9:07, the judge should say, I'm going to pass that one, we'll come back to it. Unless the attorney stands up and goes, my guy's not here and he ain't going to show up, you may as well issue a warrant. Again, that's not the judge's fault, though. Believe it or not, that is the attorney's fault in the scenario I just gave you. He said, when I arrived, I didn't think anything was wrong at all. I was outside right in front of the courtroom for 4 or 5 minutes before people made space. And he's talking about how cramped the courtroom was. As soon as I walked in, I didn't see my attorneys. I just waited and waited. By 9:17, he had spotted one of his attorneys who told him that a warrant had been issued. He was arrested an hour later and put into a holding cell. When he did finally appear before the judge, he asked when his attorneys had called the case. Could I just know what time the warrant was issued? He asked while handcuffed in court. What time did my attorney leave? And the judge says, you can ask your attorney about that, but we didn't issue it until after 9, and you're here way after that. Well, he was there at 9:07. 9:07 is not way after 9. So many people thought the judge was at fault here, and I agree. I think she was also. Now, whether she was conspiring to put a man in jail, I'm not sure, but the judge is in the wrong here. Because most judges, like I said, common sense tells you start calling cases that are ready. And then 9:30, 9:45, if there's people who still aren't there yet, you look at the attorney and go, hey, is your client coming? If they say no, you go, how do you know? If you talked to them this morning, do you know where they are? And if they say, I don't know, I'm just yanking stuff out of my back pocket. You say, well, maybe you should go try to call your client. And then if they don't show, issue a warrant. And that's another problem, is that issuing a warrant actually is a bit of a difficulty because it gets put in the system and it makes the police do work. The police have got better things to do than be processing warrants for people who are 7 minutes late for court. So there's problems all the way around. Sanchez eventually requested a recording that day in court and said he was shocked by what he saw. Now, he spent 2 weeks in jail because he wasn't able to post bond. He wanted to keep fighting his case, but eventually pleaded guilty because he had financial trouble. Primarily, his brother had put the bond money up to get him out of jail, and his brother needed the money back. And his brother said, look, I got problems. I need that money. So he says, I was outraged. I completely lost trust in the system. Now, there is an attorney who represents the Salt Lake Legal Defender Association, and also the public defenders named in this lawsuit. And he said Friday that the lawsuit was not well grounded in fact or law. Mr. Sanchez's complaint omits important factual context and misstates several key facts, he wrote in an email. We anticipate vigorously defending against Mr. Sanchez's claims. I've got news for you, sir. Exhibit 1 in this lawsuit is that videotape, the court recording, which is actually an official recording, meaning that you can get a copy from the court that is certified accurate. And everyone can watch that and see what happens. Now, I haven't read Mr. Sanchez's complaint, and it's possible that in the complaint they've spun this stuff or twisted it around or overblown something. I don't know. But I saw the video where at 8:40 they're discussing calling the case early to get a warrant issued. And at 8:45 they tell the judge, we are ready to go, but our client's not here, issue the warrant. And that statement, in essence, saying we are ready to go, but our client is not here, is a massive problem because they weren't ready to go. The case wasn't even ready to be called until 9 a.m. So there are problems there. Meanwhile, the attorney representing the other attorneys would not elaborate specifically on what particular misstatements he was pointing to. Now, the lawyer who represents Sanchez in a civil lawsuit says client's public defenders violated the man's trust. He said, public defenders take an oath to represent their clients and to serve and defend them. In many ways, the actions by his attorneys amount to nothing less than a betrayal, and I would agree with that. He is seeking an unspecified amount in monetary and punitive damages and for attorney fees, ironically. He alleges that the two attorneys committed legal malpractice, abused the court process, and violated his rights to due process. And I do wonder if these two attorneys have been reported to the Bar Association, because that would be another avenue that could be pursued. This man's arrest, according to the lawsuit, caused him serious harm. He not only spent significant time in jail, he lost wages, his reputation was damaged, and it caused him emotional distress. He said he worries that something similar had happened to other defendants, and said he hopes his lawsuit and sharing his story will encourage others to come forward if such a thing has happened to them or does in the future. So it's a scary concept. The only thing The only thing that the attorneys have got in their favor right now is that he was 7 minutes late to the courtroom itself. But that's one of those things, there's a big gray area in that he was inside the building before 9 a.m. And there's a huge line to get to the metal detectors and security. He was out in the hallway, very, very close to 9, he says, and he appears on film stepping into the courtroom, I believe at 9:07. 9:07. Now, if his case had been called at 9 and the judge was going to be hard-nosed about it, the judge could say at 9 a.m., I'm calling the Sanchez case, where is he? His attorneys would stand up and say, Your Honor, he's not here. Judges would say, well, you got the notice, boom, issue a warrant. That could happen, but that would be a judge abusing their discretion. I've talked before about how judges can exercise discretion in their courtrooms the same way a police officer can exercise discretion at the roadside. And discretion cuts both ways. Discretion means that they can give somebody slack if the situation calls for it, but it also means that they should cut someone slack when the situation calls for it. That's the thing about that. It goes both ways. So if a courtroom is packed with people and you've got 100 cases to get through by noon, it's going to be a cattle call. Boom, 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 boom. 100 cases to get through by noon. You call your first case, person's not there. Do you stop the proceedings to issue a bench warrant, or do you say, oh, we'll take them and put them to the bottom of the pile and call the next case? Now, if you're the attorney on the case that gets called first and your client's not there and your case got called and they're not there and you get put to the bottom of the pile, there goes your whole morning. But at least your client's not getting arrested, okay? And I'm just here to tell you, 31 years of practice, I've handled all sorts of cases. Yes, I have done criminal defense. Yes, I have been a court-appointed attorney. Yes, I have represented drunk drivers. People always say, Steve, you're just a lemon law attorney. What do you know? I've done all of those things. And I assure you that if my client was not in the courtroom at 9 o'clock sharp and the judge said, Mr. Lehto, are you ready to go? I'd say, Your Honor, I am, but let me step out in the hallway to double check on my client. I wouldn't even give away the fact I don't know where he is. Why? Why do that? Why hurt your own case? My goal is to get my guy in there and get the best deal I can for him. That day, that case, whatever it is. So say, Your Honor, let me step outside. I've never had a judge say, oh, Mr. Lehto, it's 9 and 1 second. Your client's not here? Let's issue a bench warrant. Never happened. Never happened. Have I ever had clients late for court? Yes. I've had a client show up late for a jury trial. I've had a client show up late for a jury trial when we were halfway through it, meaning that the judge told the jury to be there at 8:45 so we could start at 9 sharp. I had a client wander into the courtroom at 9:15. Okay, I do what I can to cover for that, but there's only so much I can do. As for this guy walking into the courtroom at 9:07 and then standing around for a while before somebody says, oh, by the way, a bench warrant's been issued for your arrest, and it was issued at 8:45. And by the way, remember when he asked what time was the bench warrant issued? What time was the case called? And they wouldn't tell him? Why do you think that is? I mentioned about a week ago that you can tell what a person's thought process is by their actions oftentimes. So if I walk up to you and you're the attorney on that case and I go, what time did you call it? What time did you call it? And you go, I don't know. Go look it up. You know darn well you called it at 8:45 and you got problems. And that right there to me shows an issue. The fact that the judge didn't know, that's possible if there were in fact 50 cases or 100 cases on the docket that morning. But watching the videotape, it appeared to me that nothing was happening except people were milling around. And then these attorneys said, Your Honor, we can go on the record. So it would probably be in the judge's mind that, hey, these people were the first on the record, and that was before 9 o'clock. However, the fact that his attorneys tap danced around it, they knew they'd screwed up, and they knew they were caught because there's cameras all around the courtroom. And by the way, this is the funniest thing of all, is that people get so used to the idea that they're being surveilled in all situations that they forget about it. And when you see people do stupid things on camera, you have to ask yourself, wait, they know there's cameras. They know courtrooms are being recorded. They know all of this is on the record, and they still did it. So this will be an interesting case. I don't think there's much of an issue with liability here in terms of, I don't think that it's going to be difficult to prove that those people are liable. It's more of a question of what his damages are. But he spent 2 weeks in jail. 2 weeks in jail. What's that worth? It's got to be worth something. So we'll see what happens. I will update this case. I'm fascinated by this case because one of the biggest problems that I have with stories that I tell you stories every day. Many of the stories I have are one person says, here's what happened. Other person says, no, here's what happened. You go, how are we going to prove this? Well, I got this piece of paper right here that shows, I got a receipt over here that shows. We've got this one on video. You can go watch the video. You can watch the entire video from beginning to end, and then you don't need to be told what happened there. You saw it with your own eyes. And that's one of the problems that the defendants are going to have in this case because they are caught on camera on hot mics saying, 8:40, let's wait 4 minutes. 8:45. 8:45 to tell a judge, call the case, we're ready to go. But our client's not here, issue a bench warrant for his arrest. And they are, as they say, throwing him under the bus. So Utah man sues public defenders alleging they conspired to put him in jail. Salt Lake Tribune, Jessica Miller wrote it. Caleb sent it. Thanks a lot, my friend. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Remember, your memories are not stored in the object. The memories are stored in you.